international community has resoundingly rejected the US blockade against Cuba in the 29th UN vote on the resolution demanding the lifting of the criminal policy. The 9th Moscow Conference on International Security is underway in Russia. And anti-Olympics protests continue in Japan a month ahead of the Games. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. With 184 votes in favour, 2 against and 3 abstentions, Cuba obtained yet another diplomatic victory in the United Nations General Assembly against the criminal US blockade this Wednesday. As on the other 28 occasions, the United States and Israel voted against the lifting of the blockade, an illegal, unilateral and extraterritorial policy that violates the human rights of the Cuban people. The 3 abstentions corresponded to US allies, Colombia, Brazil and Ukraine. Year after year since 1992, the United Nations General Assembly has overwhelmingly backed the resolution against the sanctions that violate international law and prevent Cuba from developing on an equal basis with the rest of the world. Even in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, the sanctions were reinforced by the Trump administration, and the Biden administration has done nothing to change the situation. And during his speech to present the resolution on the need to lift the US blockade before the UN General Assembly, Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez stressed the huge economic damages caused by the criminal policy.
The government of the United States used the virus as an ally in its merciless, non-conventional war. It, in a deliberate and opportunistic fashion, ratcheted up the economic, commercial and financial blockade and caused the country to suffer losses standing at around $5 billion.
UN debate preceding the vote on the resolution this Wednesday, several countries expressed their condemnation of the unilateral and extraterritorial US blockade. Ambassador of Venezuela to the United Nations, Samuel Moncada, expressed his country's solidarity with the Cuban government and people.
It is illegal because it violates all norms of international law. It is inhumane because it violates the human rights of an entire people. And worse still, it is criminal because it is a policy of calculated cruelty which seeks to produce pain and suffering among the civilian population. It is an attack which uses economic instruments. It is an act of collective punishment which, owing to its systematic and deliberate nature, constitutes a crime against humanity.
Mexico's representative to the United Nations, Juan Ramón de la Fuente, stated that the lifting of the blockade cannot be postponed as the move would be of benefit for peace and stability in the Caribbean and Central American region.
In the face of a pandemic such as that of COVID-19, we cannot postpone the lifting of the blockade against Cuba. Mexico is convinced that lifting this blockade will contribute to not only reversing the difficult economic situation that the Cuban people finds itself in, but rather it will also improve the regional climate. And we urge the international community to demonstrate its solidarity and support.
Haiti's representative to the United Nations, Justine Chin-Wesley-Casseur, spoke on behalf of the Caribbean community, highlighting the support Cuba has offered CARICOM member states despite the limitations of the blockade.
We continue to reiterate our unequivocal opposition and rejection of the imposition of unilateral coercive measures and to call for the immediate and unconditional end of the economic, commercial and financial blockade imposed on Cuba by the government of the United States of America. CARICOM states further rejects the enforcement of extraterritorial laws and measures such as the Helms-Burton Act. Mr. President, CARICOM states continue to enjoy friendly relations with both Cuba and the United States of America. However, we consider the lifting of the embargo to be a prerequisite to any meaningful rapprochement between the two countries.
Organisations, social movements and political activists from various countries have been participating since Monday in the Bicentennial Congress of the Peoples of the World, which is being held in the Venezuelan capital, Caracas. From the United States, members of the delegation representing the Democratic Socialists of America explained their motives for participating in the event. Let's take a look.
This is actually our first delegation that we've ever sent to Venezuela to participate in the Congreso. Already you can see all these wonderful people gathering together. It's been a tremendous experience of solidarity and learning about the various socialist struggles of the world.
And this is a huge step for our organization. In the United States, we have a special obligation in terms of our commitment to anti-imperialism. And so being here and being able to learn more about the sanctions and again our special obligation to support the Venezuelan Socialist Project is extremely important. It's been an honor and it's been very humbling.
DSA stands in solidarity with the Venezuelan people against the Venezuelan sanctions, or the U.S. sanctions of Venezuela. And hopefully this will lead to an expansion of support for third world struggles going forward.
Very excited to be part of the delegation traveling here. We stand in solidarity with Venezuela and denounce the unilateral coercive measures by the United States that have devastated the
And as part of the Bicentennial Congress of the Peoples of the World, historian, intellectual and journalist Vijay Prashad, head of the Tricontinental Institute for Social Research, spoke about the role of the media and its influence on social struggles across the globe.
Some movements, we neglect political education. We don't believe that our own organizations are a media. Our own people are watching the bourgeois media and absorbing bourgeois ideas. What's the point of people outside the organizations if we haven't even strengthened our own organizations? Each member of every one of our organizations is a television set. They will go among the people and inform the people about the world. It is our role as intellectuals in the movement to build the confidence of our organizations.
Brazil's controversial environment minister has stepped down amid a probe into his alleged role in an illegal logging scheme. Ricardo Salles has been in the post in the midst of the push by the far-right Bolsonaro administration to impose major cuts to environmental protections and became notorious for presiding over massive deforestation in the Amazon rainforest. His resignation comes weeks after the opening of 2 police investigations against him, one for links to an illegal timber trafficking case and the other for allegedly obstructing investigations in a deforestation case. President Jair Bolsonaro has already nominated a replacement.
Apresentei ao senhor presidente o meu pedido de exoneração.
And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In Russia, the most urgent problems and trends in the field of international military policy are being discussed at the 9th Moscow Conference on International Security. President Vladimir Putin inaugurated the event by addressing participants and guests via video conference. He expressed his concern about the ongoing intensification of military capacity and infrastructure of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization near Russia's borders. The forum provides a unique space for expert exchanges on regional threats and challenges. Conference participants also discuss security issues in Europe, the Middle East, Asia, Africa and Latin America. Last year's conference was postponed until 2021 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu stressed Wednesday that his country cooperates in the military technical sphere with Cuba, Nicaragua and Venezuela, 3 countries facing foreign threats. The minister also highlighted the progress of cooperation with Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Paraguay, Peru and Uruguay. For his part, President Vladimir Putin described this partnership with Latin American nations as historic. More than 600 delegates from over 100 countries and international organizations, including representatives of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe and the United Nations, are taking part in the international conference, which will conclude on Thursday. The Russian Defense Ministry reported Wednesday that a Russian ship fired warning shots at a British warship after it violated Russian territorial waters in the Black Sea and advanced 3 kilometers in the area of the Crimean Peninsula. The military attaché of the British Embassy in Moscow was summoned to the Defense Ministry after the incident. Meanwhile, the Foreign Ministry reported that it had also summoned the British ambassador to explain the move. 9 Catalan pro-independence leaders have left prison after being pardoned by the Spanish government. Met by the cheers of their supporters on their release, the 9 left behind their lengthy terms for organising a bid to make Catalonia an independent republic 4 years ago. The pardoned independence leaders have all served more than 3 years of a 9 to 13 years sentence for their role in the banned referendum of October 2017, which ended with large demonstrations and police repression. The 9 are still banned from holding public office. And the pardons issued to the Catalan pro-independence leaders were addressed in the Spanish Parliament. Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez spoke in defence of the move as he was questioned by lawmakers.
This measure is a brave measure. This measure is to repair. This is a measure that is in favor of concord and cohesion. It is a measure that is going to reduce territorial and political discord, and this is fundamental to improve cohesion in Catalonia. In Spanish democracy, everyone can defend the ideas that they want. I am not going to convince you that the best solution for Catalonia is to not go for independence, but instead maintain the union with the various peoples of Spain. But the only thing that I am going to ask you, and the Together for Catalonia party, with whom you are now leading the Catalonian presidency, is that you defend the constitutional pact, the democratic legality, and the statute of autonomy of Catalonia.
Cuba continues clinical trials of its Soberana O2 vaccine candidate in pediatric age groups after having already confirmed its high efficacy in adults. According to a tweet by the Finlay Vaccine Institute, the current stage of the trials includes 25 children aged between 3 and 11. The trials began on June 14th with volunteers belonging to the 12 to 18 age group in the capital, Havana. According to authorities conducting the study, 3 phases will be completed to cover 350 pediatric-aged volunteers. Over the weekend, it was announced that the Soberana O2 candidate had shown 62% efficacy with 2 doses in phase 3 clinical trials with adults, with a 3rd dose called Soberana Plus expected to further boost this efficacy. Mexico is set to donate vaccines against the coronavirus to 5 countries in the Latin American region based on its policy of solidarity. The move was announced by Foreign Secretary Marcelo Ebrard on Tuesday, who stressed that his government is in a position to help other nations. He pointed out that the AstraZeneca vaccine produced in collaboration with Argentina will help protect the populations of Latin America. Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago will receive the Mexican vaccine donations in the coming days. Other nations such as Belize, Bolivia and Paraguay have already received doses that Mexico donated to help advance in their vaccination processes. The national vaccination plan against COVID-19 is progressing in Mexico. To date, the country has received over 50 million doses of vaccines to fight the epidemic. We have more details in the following report with our correspondent in Mexico City, Eduardo Martinez.
The halls of the Sports Palace in Mexico City have operated for months as vaccination centers against COVID-19. In places like these, distributed throughout Mexico, 40 million doses have been administered up to June 21st. On this occasion, the authorities began with the vaccination of people between 40 and 49 years of age and have opened registration for those aged between 30 and 39. Receiving a vaccine against the coronavirus will allow the population to carry out their activities with a little more confidence.
It is very important to be vaccinated. There are many people who do not want to be vaccinated, but I think we must contribute to this in order to be able to live a normal life, because after a year it is difficult to go out and interact with the world again, to trust in people, to be greeted, to be around many people. It is complicated.
Most people are aware that health measures should be maintained. even after they have received the 2 doses needed to achieve optimal levels of immunity.
You must continue to take care of yourself with the face mask, the antibacterial. In fact, here I have my sanitizer. My gel, I don't go out without this.
According to the authorities, in the last 2 weeks, there has been a 9% increase in the number of positive cases, and in the coming days, they warned, the rate could range between 15 and 18 percentage points.
This could represent a change in the course of the epidemic, or it could not, as has happened throughout the drop in the epidemic, where we have this sort of zigzag or staircase. At some points, we have had some upturns, but the general trend has been downward.
Meanwhile, the reception of vaccines and the manufacturing process continue. The government reported that it will send AstraZeneca vaccines packaged in the country to Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Jamaica, and Trinidad and Tobago.
Eduardo Martínez, teleSUR, Ciudad de México.
And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Hundreds of demonstrators marched through the centre of the Japanese capital this Wednesday to call for the cancellation of the Olympic and Paralympic Games. With just 1 month to go before the July 23rd opening ceremonies of the Tokyo Summer Olympics, concerns have been mounting regarding the increase in COVID infections in Japan and the risk posed by holding the Games. On Monday, authorities announced that spectators would be allowed inside the Games venues with a capacity limit of 50% or up to 10,000 people. Support for going ahead with the event seems to be increasing in recent polls, but the majority of the Japanese population remains sceptical about whether the country can successfully hold a so-called safe and secure Olympics amid the pandemic.
What I want to say today is that it's not too late to cancel. On the one hand, they are telling people to not go out too much and to avoid contact with others, and on the other, they are mobilizing crowds for a national event. It's that whole system that I've come to denounce.
The way things are going is a victory for power and money, and the sacrifice of daily life. We owe it to ourselves to stop this with the power of ordinary citizens.
Iranian authorities have stressed that the seizure of several Iranian state media websites by the United States government came in response to the recently held successful presidential election and the country's determination to defend its sovereignty and call for an end to Western sanctions and attempts to secure concessions regarding the nuclear deal.
We are using all international and legal means to act accordingly, to condemn this action and to expose to the public this mistaken policy of the United States, which appears not constructive when talks for a deal on the nuclear issue are underway.
According to the United Nations Special Envoy to Afghanistan, Taliban insurgents have captured more than 50 of the country's 370 districts since May, as peace continues to appear a long way off. Special Envoy Deborah Lyons claimed that the announcement earlier this year that foreign troops would finally withdraw from Afghanistan sent a tremor through the country. She warned that increased conflict posed a risk of insecurity to many other nations. After 20 years of foreign interference and war, the United States has started to withdraw its remaining 2,500 troops from Afghanistan and aims to be completely out of the country by the symbolic date of September 11th. Togo has inaugurated the largest solar plant in West Africa in a push to increase access to electricity and develop renewables in the small coastal country. The 50-megawatt facility will provide power to more than 158,000 households and save more than 1 million tons of CO2 emissions, according to authorities. Togo, which imports more than half of its energy from Nigeria and Ghana, is banking on solar power to develop access to electricity for its 8 million residents. To celebrate the 100 years of the Communist Party of China and the South African Communist Party, the Chinese Embassy in South Africa held a webinar with the African National Congress and other stakeholders. Our collaborator Stephen Taylor brings us the details in the following report from Cape Town.
The Chinese Communist Party celebrates 100 years of existence this year, having been formed on the 1st of July 1921. The CPC held its first Congress back on the 23rd of July 1921. The CPC is currently led by the General Secretary, Xi Jinping, who also serves as the President of the People's Republic of China. South Africa has strong ties with China, with the SACP, South African Communist Party, being formed in the same month as the CPC back in 1921, therefore sharing the 100-year celebration together. China and South Africa are also part of BRICS, along with Russia, India, and Brazil. Former President of South Africa, Kgalema Motlanthe, has this to say about the CPC.
The Communist Party of China proved to be the most consistent in the struggle to attain national independence and to pursue profound changes in social and economic life. It is always easy for an organization to proclaim itself the vanguard, but much effort and selflessness is required from a party to make the working class itself to recognize it as their own true vanguard and leader.
China is represented in South Africa by its ambassador, Chen Zhizhong, who thanked those who recently took part in the celebration of the CPC and spoke about the relationship between China and South Africa.
Although our countries are continents apart, although we have a very different history there is much what we can learn from each side. I'm also impressed by His Excellency President Motlante's remarks that the CPC has been able to develop a system that allows it to select the most competent, experienced, and educated officials for leadership positions where it matters most.
For teleSUR News in Cape Town, I'm Stephen Taylor.
And we've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also follow us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. Plus you can catch up on our shows on our YouTube channel. For teleSUR English, I'm Katrina Goss. Thank you for watching.